Well, good morning. My name is Vipperman with Eagle Venture Fund and excited to be back on a webinar with you all. Today is our third in a series of webinars on the Eagle Freedom Fund 2. As many of you know out there, and some of you may not yet, we started the Eagle Freedom Fund 1 over a year ago now, almost 2 years ago, and just had an amazing time as we discovered some of the challenges in the world of human trafficking and child exploitation, and how we might be able to invest in some for-profit, incredible business founders who are building awesome tech companies who are seeking to push back traffickers and fight against human trafficking and child exploitation. So Fund 1 was amazing. We were able to raise $19 million, invest in 20 awesome companies. We're back now with Freedom Fund 2. That we opened just a few months ago in September, and are already off and rolling with 4 or 5 investments in that fund. So exciting for Wes Lyons, one of our general partners, to get a chance to share more with you this morning. Wes, take it over, buddy.
Thanks, Vip, and excited to be on with you all. I'll share several thoughts here, but would love it to be conversational. If you've got questions, just drop a comment in the chat room or pipe in via voice as well. But yeah, we started this several years ago. For me, the journey of why I got into this started on the battlefield in the Philippines, where ISIS was using children in combat. And really since 2017, we've been exploring what does it mean to invest. And about once per year from 17 through 23, we were making investments that directly touched human trafficking. But in 23, found that we had this explosion of opportunity that was happening, where we said, wouldn't it be cool if there was a fund dedicated to fighting human trafficking? And that's what the Freedom Fund 1 did. It was dedicated to seeding the counter-trafficking industry, and Freedom Fund 2 is growing it. And as we dig into it, one of the first questions that always comes up is basically, how on earth do you make money fighting human trafficking? Like, most people just don't think of human trafficking as something that the for-profit world has a role in. And in many ways, the problem that we're trying to address is that capitalism and for-profit businesses have not played their role to date that they should in fighting human trafficking. But we're here to say that's changing. You can see the graph in front of you. We're about 500 million a year in the counter-trafficking industry, which we've named as part of this. And it is growing fast. We think it'll be 5 billion per year by 2030. And it is broken up across several different, you can see 15 different subsectors that our analysts have built into it. There is a lot of growth and a lot of opportunity. But what we find is most helpful in trying to understand the answer to that question, how do you make money fighting trafficking, is to pull in what you understand from other counter-crime industries. So think of counter-fraud, counter-identity theft, cybersecurity. These are all industries that are tens to hundreds of billions dedicated to stopping a crime. And so what's so different about this crime set? It's plenty big enough. It's plenty emotive enough. There's all the reasons in place that it should have its own industry. And I'm excited to say it does. At 500 million a year, it is large enough to call it an industry, but growing rapidly. And we're very excited about the potential. You might ask, why do we think it's growing so fast? And it's because of the echo we're seeing with what happened in cybersecurity. So cybersecurity, if you roll back the clock to 2003, it's about to go on a 100x run. You can picture there's a bunch of techies running around and saying, we can help protect your business from hackers. And they have an emerging little industry at 3 billion per year, but it's about to go on a 100x run. And if you interview the people who went on that hyper growth ride, they'll tell you 3 things really drove that. It was regulators coming in and saying, hey, you have sensitive data. You're going to have to take care of it. You do it by spending into cybersecurity. Litigators in the courtroom started saying, hey, you didn't do industry standard best practices to protect your client data. You're going to get hammered for it. That drew up the pressure. And then the third that really catapulted it was the insurance pressure. So if you've been a small business owner and ever gone for a cybersecurity writer and said, I'd like cyber coverage on this policy, you know that it comes with a checklist of things that you're supposed to spend and do. And you've got to hit all those checklist items before they said, yes, we will insure your cybersecurity risk. And usually the regulators make sure that you have that insurance. It all kind of interweaves. Those were the 3 things that absolutely took cybersecurity on its massive run. All 3 are in play in human trafficking right now. Regulators are coming in hot, primarily on the labor trafficking side, from California's newest regulations to the Uyghur Forced Labor Protection Act to EU and Canada and Australia. Across the globe, we're seeing a cascade of the regulatory pressure that has teeth in it. Like EU corporate directive puts 5% of top line revenue at stake if you don't comply, of looking into forced slavery and eliminating it from your supply chains. The litigators are doing their job in spades. We're looking at 200 court cases active right now, primarily against the big three industries that are exposed to human trafficking, in sex trafficking here in the US. It's hospitality, where people are sold from. It's transportation, how they move people that they're going to buy and sell, and it's finance, how the money moves through this industry. These are the three industries that are going to spend the most as we implement scalable industry standard best practices for the big three industries to spend into the solution. And third is insurance. Insurance is going through the same sequence of steps that cybersecurity did. Early on in cybersecurity, they were just started dropping in coverage left and right because they didn't know how to cover us. That's the stage we're in. But then followed by that is the implementation of best practices. Those checklists get developed and they start adding in coverage on what they're starting to understand. So we're in inning 1 to 2 of the insurance for angle on this, and expect it to become a huge tailwind over the coming years. So you can tell we're super bullish that what is today a baby industry of 500 million per year is going to grow a ton. But what does that look like in practice? Kind of what are we actually building? There's 3 future states that we're building for. The first is we don't want people to be trafficked in the first place, actually. We want to build a safe digital world for children where they don't get sextorted, they don't get groomed, they don't get pulled into this in the first place. A whole suite of technologies that are doing beautiful things, and we had a whole webinar dedicated to this, like SafetyNet, that's taking a cell phone, putting an artificial intelligence on it, and it will not render an explicit image. If you're trying to groom a child through that process or sextort a child, it involves them taking explicit images of themselves, getting themselves compromised. It's part of the journey. That is exploitation in itself, but it's also to the journey to worse things. That is an example of an exploding technology already serving 50,000 families, launching a global rollout with Nokia and hopefully additional brands as well. Very excited about preventing kids from getting exploited in the first place. The second is decimating the sex trafficking industry. You might ask, like, what do we mean by that? Is it possible to win this fight? A lot of people are kind of look at something like sex trafficking and they go, oh, is that something you're ever really going to stop? And no, we don't believe that fundamentally human nature is about to change. What we believe is that the current status quo of this being a very, very lucrative, high reward crime with very low risk does not have to continue. And almost anybody, if you interview them, they might have questions about, like, what would this, can we stop this at large? But if you say, hey, in our city, in Dallas, Fort Worth, or in Houston, or in your city, does it have to continue as this incredibly high reward, very low risk activity? That status quo, we don't believe has to continue to exist. And this whole suite of technologies coming alongside law enforcement and hospitality and finance, and using AI and visual recognition and all this suite of technologies is on a mission to flip that dynamic to where it becomes a very high risk, low reward activity, and essentially breaking the business of human trafficking. That's the goal in sex trafficking. And then globally in labor trafficking, it's bringing supply chain transparency at a scale that we actually tip the arc of justice towards people being paid a fair wage in our supply chains. Today, we know there's 26 million labor trafficking victims in our supply chains, and we're seeing breakthrough technologies like Evidensity just mapped 26,000 of them, and the work that they do for S&P 500 companies, it mapped all the way up to 105 companies, and we're able to show how many slaves from that area of Africa were working for each company. Just absolutely breathtaking what the combination of people plus AI. A lot of these companies are using AI, and but our passion is solving problems and coming alongside entrepreneurs to build what matters. In AI, the thesis is that people plus AI are what this generation of AI is about. It's not about handing complex decision-making off to AI and saying, good luck, I'm sure it'll work out fine. It's AI enabling people at scale, and Evidence City is a beautiful example of that, where they can map from dirt to consumer in a way that hasn't been possible in the past. And Fund 2 is doing exactly the same thing, building these same 3 future state and building what matters towards the future that we hope for. And it's just taking it from more of a seed state to growing this counter-trafficking industry. And I'll give you a couple examples. This brief is specifically about the sex trafficking industry. So I want to show you some examples of what that looks like. And feel free to drop any questions. That kind of completes the section on why we think we can make money in the entire overarching. And I'll dive into examples here. One example here is Altus, led by Ashley Chapman. One of the most acute needs in almost every community across the United States and first world countries is the ability to identify trafficking victims. So you might have gone to a nonprofit dinner and heard people say, wow, it's so large in our city. And if you're like me, I hear those numbers of like there's tens of thousands or over 100,000 in our city, and I'm willing to, that are being trafficked in our city. And I tend to respond like, I'm willing to go with you, but where are they? Like, I'm not seeing them. Help me see what is unseen all around me. And what we're finding is that doctors and nurses have a very unique ability to see people who have been trafficked because they have this place of trust. And that if they're trained well and they know who to call, and not just like a sign that says 1-800-trafficking, but actually know Cindy on the other end of the line is the person, and they know Cindy and they know who to call and when those situations happen. What we're seeing is that up to 100 times increase in identifications out of an ER team. So they might have identified 2 to 3 trafficking victims per year. Now they're identifying 200 to 300. Absolutely breathtaking impact at a scale that they're already trained 6,000 frontline doctors and nurses. But this is a great example of proved out the idea in Fund 1. Fund 2, they're coming to us with a plan for a $5 million raise to take this out to 5,000 hospitals that have indicated interest. So it's time to take what we know is working and pour gas on the fire, if that makes sense. DéjaVu is a great example of helping law enforcement get ahead of the traffickers. Law enforcement came to DéjaVu, and they have a pattern recognition technology that Apple and Google have sat down and said, we can't touch it. It is absolutely breathtaking how effectively they can recognize patterns. And law enforcement came to DéjaVu and said, hey, we have this picture of 2 young women. We know that they were trafficked. We know that they're underage. We know they're for sale right now because the ad just went up. We just can't find them. We think they're somewhere in Tennessee. Will you help us? 22 minutes later, they came back with the address, and the girls were rescued in less than 3 hours. This has been moving up to scale. I think there were 450 children identified using this technology in the last few months. Many 40-something of them were cold cases that they had been given up on. This is the type of firepower you want in the good guys' hands. It's really exciting to see what they're doing. And there's tons of applications for it, as from military to law enforcement to retail. We're very excited about this combo of what you'll see us often talking about is the combo of financial and impact potential. And what people often pause and ask us is, many of us have really experienced a linear relationship between profit and impact, if that makes sense, where we kind of picture on one end, we've got purely good people in the nonprofit world who you're never going to get your money back, but they're purely good. And on the other end, you have people that are just barely out of prison, but they're making the most money possible. And we have this picture that it's a linear relationship, that if you're going to, and it would break that relationship if we could make a ton of impact and significantly grow your wealth. But what we're here to say is that when you have companies who the thing that they're paid to do is what you're looking for in the impact world, we call it direct impact, that you can break that relationship. That line that we've perceived to exist, you drop a data point way off that line that says it's possible, if you build a portfolio of direct impact companies, to pursue both exceptional impact, in this case, building an industry of fighting human trafficking. And honestly, we can't get there without growing rapidly. Like, the industry is supposed to go to 5 billion, then 50 billion, if it follows what we hope will happen. And that's what it looks like for the for-profit world to really step into this fight. we can't get there without these companies growing really rapidly. So it is mission essential to grow these companies. And it kind of takes a little bit of talking about and thinking about, because most of us have somewhere baked into our DNA that linear relationship that you can't grow something rapidly or grow wealth rapidly and really go after the impact that you hope for. One example of that direct impact is a company called Darkwatch. They've identified over 1 million illicit organizations. This is one view out of their software, looking at Washington, D.C., where Vip is going to fly tomorrow. And it's showing illicit massage brothels, so brothels all over the city. And what they're doing with this data is they're looking at something like Rising Sun Massage here and saying, hey, this is 196 reviews where the AI is saying, this is a case of somebody saying, this is the sex act that I paid for, and this is what I thought of it. Smoking gun evidence that Rising Sun Massage is an illicit massage brothel. And now there's a lot of pieces it takes to pull that all the way from that evidence into a court case, but there's other pieces of the portfolio. But this is a key element to be able to see where is the pain in our city, bringing a transparency to what does success look like. Success in DC looks like all those red dots turning off. And it's plausible within the next 5 years to actually see at scale these brothels put out of business, either via criminal or civil action, which is very, very exciting. If you move over from that law enforcement view, take the view of a hospitality owner for a second. And we came to a realization a little over a year ago that we knew about all these tools that could help hospitality fight human trafficking. We knew that there were all these data tools that could tell them where people were being advertised. There were visual recognition tools to figure out when criminals were coming in the door. There were response mechanism, AI bots, and there were all these tools, but we realized nobody was putting them together. And it's a really high bar to ask the CEO of Marriott to go find 10 different technology companies, hire somebody out of HSI and put it all together. That's what it would have taken before Hotel Shield. So we have the ability to both come alongside entrepreneurs, but even to co-found with entrepreneurs at Eagle. And it's one of the most effective ways to both deploy capital, but also rapidly accelerate impact. That's what we did here with Hotel Shield. And we've gotten to already pilot with some of the largest brands in the world. We did it around the Super Bowl. We're hoping we did it around Mardi Gras. We're already in talks about some of the major sporting events coming up next year, from World Cup and beyond. It's incredibly exciting to come alongside an industry. Hospitality is under fire from so many different angles, and they need businesses that could come along and say, we can solve this problem for you. And that's what Hotel Shield is doing alongside the other technologies. And those are just examples. I won't go through the 22 companies that are in the portfolio, and Freedom 2 actually has several in it already. But what it's helpful to understand is you may be familiar with investing in public companies or large funds where we're not used to our investment actually making a difference in the world, if that makes sense. If you put dollars into Apple today, it's a stretch to make a case that is going to change Apple's future, as an example. And even down to the small cap world, almost nothing in the public world or even large private funds can you really say, wow, this check really changed the future of that company. But in the case when we're playing in early stage finance and where we're at in the journey of this industry, every $250,000 actually goes to hiring new people. If you look at the gaming industry, we're in the process and final diligence on a $1.25 million investment that'll lead a $3 million round. Every $250,000 that goes in is a suite of developers that are building a technology that is directly stopping predators from pursuing children. Literally, the second tranche of that investment is released when they stop 10,000 predatory events. And they get there faster when we put a $250,000 in. Or when Altus has proven out their technology of training frontline doctors and nurses. Ashley came to me and she was like, hey, there's so much we could do to move faster. Every time one of these companies renews, they're 3 times larger than the last, but I need more capital to grow as fast as I want to. And she had come from the nonprofit world. I was like, Ashley, you just went from $300,000 to $5 million in revenue in 12 months. You're allowed to come back to the market and ask for growth capital. That is exactly what you want your portfolio companies to do. And what is so different in the public markets, that CEO has no idea that you put in $250,000 into their business. In Altus, she literally gets a call and she says, 5 people are ready to be hired right now. She already has them picked out. I send her the wire and she hires them that day. Like, this is such an impactful way to invest because it's profoundly moving the needle towards speed and scale and sustainability. Speed and scale because we get where we want to go faster, which is great for us as investors, but great for us as humans. And it's sustainable. Like, that's the beauty of for-profit mechanisms, that as it scales, the continuing education industry, it might sound like a small industry fighting human trafficking and the training of it, but it's a $64 billion industry. If you look at all of continuing education, half of the industries that require continuing education have put in a requirement that you have to train on counter-trafficking. So if you rough napkin math, say half the industries would represent 32 billion. And if you take some napkin math guess that one of their 20 hours per year is needed to be counter-trafficking, you're looking at a $1 billion to 2 billion TAM, and there's no doubt that we've backed the leader in the market. This is great venture capital investing in its finest sense. That is not a nonprofit, if that makes sense. So we're very, very excited about the future, where that's going. And as we look back at these at the history, we absolutely see that it's been working over the past, from 2017, all the vintages of these funds. We're really thankful that the systems that we've built to figure out their fit and their investability and their financial models, our passion is coming alongside entrepreneurs. I was just talking with Michael about this. He's like, what do you enjoy most in all the things that you do? I love coming alongside entrepreneurs, and this is our passion in helping them to see their vision come to life. And especially when we get them working together as a team. Like, Vip leads the Clapham Accelerator that's getting together twice a year. It's 150, it grows every time, but call it 150 to 200 of the leading innovators in fighting human trafficking. And getting them together in the room is it's palpable, the energy, as people start to smell that we might be able to actually play a meaningful role in moving the needle on fighting trafficking. But part of that is absolutely adding capital to these companies so that they can grow faster. The team's in place, the business is already, and we're here to make a direct ask if you would partner with us, because every $250,000 is a call that I get to make to somebody like Ashley, and they get to say, all right, I'm hiring 3 more people. We're going faster on this mission. So that's why we're passionate about it. That's why we're willing to lean in and make these direct asks, because we're so excited about that combo of impact and financial potential. And that is the pitch. But would love to hear questions that come up as you listen to that. I know some of you all kind of know us well and have seen pieces of that and are even invested with us already. But what questions come up as you hear me riffing on that vision? Michael or Ralph? I know you've seen us for a bit.
Say, first of all, guys, thank you again for the work that you're doing. Just so appreciate it. It's fantastic. So, you know, I'm a fan, I'm an investor. I just think, and I know you guys are interacting with a lot of people in these conversations, and I know everything can't be a sweet spot for you, but I thought about 2 things, Wes, based on what you presented. One is, you know, the regulatory environment changing, and of course, focusing on the cybersecurity element of that. But I just think about simple things, you know, where we see the requirements from a regulatory perspective on even just labor practices. Right. So you mentioned hospitals being, you know, the staff being trained to look for and facilitate conversations and help people that are being trafficked. And so, geez, we have, you know, every company has to do sexual harassment training.
Yes.
They have to do, you know, not the woke DEI stuff, but they have to do some type of discriminatory training. Right. So can you imagine if every, you know, hospital, every large medical group had to do training around identifying people that are being trafficked? Yeah. Right? Having a strategy to facilitate that. Now, when you've got a government, right? I mean, we all generally want less government intervention on a lot of things, but that would be one. that would certainly give the skills and requirements around facilitating, helping in those situations. That's obviously highly scalable. So I know it's not your guys' sweet spot, but I know you talk to a lot of people and you've identified a specific, area. And I'm just emphasizing what you said. I think that could be a way to accelerate people gaining those skills and knowledge around what to do in those situations. Similarly, we all know there's a massive nursing shortage that's going to be exploding to over 1 million registered nurses in the next 5 years. So the nursing schools are doing a lot of training right now, and that's exploding in a lot of different ways. And, I understand all that through the Single Mom Scholars Program and all the nurses that were graduating. So another area, right, besides the regulatory side, is through the education systems in the nursing schools all over the country. So
I think there's a huge opportunity
around human trafficking identification, support mechanisms, and all that. Another way, so we can work from both sides to accelerate the ability to get those skills into the hands of those people, and then have a mechanism for them to facilitate that. So just a couple of quick ideas based on what you presented. I love what you guys are doing, and I don't know if those could be helpful, but you talk to a lot of people, and if there's something I can do to facilitate anything there, just let me know.
I love it. We're actively hunting for a training company focused on the nurses, because we've succeeded a ton with Vero skills, and we've succeeded a ton in their training into kind of HVAC type of electrician type of jobs, and then we've succeeded with Graceland, that's doing upskilling from teachers assistants to full-blown teachers, and different angles. You included that there's huge opportunity in the nursing space. So Michael, if you know anybody in that space.
Yeah, we've done a lot of nurse recruiting, and we've also worked with bringing nurses over from the Philippines into the US and Canadian market. So Ralph, if you're bored, if you want to start a company with us, let's chat. So well, because we want to employ survivors, and in a recruiting company, you can potentially have the survivors working, in different roles, whether that's training them to do sourcing, training them to do some recruiting, training them to be nurses, right? I think there's a lot becoming a nurse is a great skill, a great career to have. Yeah. Healthcare is definitely one of the areas. When we talk about survivor flourishing, healthcare is one of the areas. We looked at creating a couple different businesses, for survivors specifically. I hadn't thought about nursing didn't come up just because of all the certifications required and schooling required. But like a nurse's aide could very well be a much easier entry point for a survivor. So Ralph, if you want to chat, I'd love to chat. And Wes and Vip, I just want to thank you guys for. You guys I know you've done thousands of these calls. I never feel like it's a pitch. I never feel like you're selling, and I never feel like this is something like that's not genuine. And so that's because you really believe this, and the Spirit of God is using you. And so please keep doing these calls. Please keep. Just one person gets motivated and encouraged. Like I just texted you, Wes. Like I want to invest, and I want you to invest in our company. So I don't know if that's possible. Is that weird? I just love you guys so much. But great job. I love hearing you talk. I've heard this pitch many times. I just like listening to you guys share the story, because it's not shared enough. So thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Well, Austin, we came up with a business that you need to start, so we'll let you know.
Yes.
Any other questions, Chris or Brady or Austin? We just kind of wrapped, and we're doing some questions on the backside.